Well, it's me again, and this is my podcast and my world, where I take you along on an adventure where we get to explore everything and anything that goes on in my mind. Oh boy, is it random, is it crazy, it's nuts, it's all over the place. So grab yourself a cup of coffee and let's have a good time. Well, hello again, my friends. I'm Graham, and I think this is my podcast, and you're listening to it. This is number 27, and it's not early in the morning. No, it sure isn't. It is certainly not. It is in the middle of thy day. And what a day it has been. Alright, so you're going to probably end up hearing this, probably sometime after today, but today is still Friday when I'm recording this. I got a lot going on in my little mind here. A lot going on. Let's start by saying, if you're new to my podcast or my channel, welcome. There's been a lot of newbies, so welcome. I am an open book. I have nothing to hide. I will talk about anything and everything. I know it's probably super stupid and super dangerous of me to do, but that is what it is. That is the way it is. I am, this July, coming up on 17 years being cancer-free. I was diagnosed in October of 99 with Hodgkin's lymphoma, and in 2001 ended up receiving a stem cell transplant from Fred Hutch Cancer Research Center in Seattle. That was all leading up to that was a full body radiation and chemotherapy. And it was a long battle, one that I don't ever want to do again, nor do I want to see anyone that I care about, love, respect, or heck for that matter, anyone of the human race, no matter how much I can't stand someone, to see them go through what I had to go through. I am so thankful that I was drugged up so much for most of it. I was on all kinds of hardcore painkillers and that kind of thing. And then, of course, I also, while I was going through getting my stem cell transplant, in order to get that, I had to have the full body radiation and chemotherapy. And I had the full body radiation first. It was a week-long process, 7 days of radiation, and it was an ordeal in itself. You have to go into this room, and there's this big door. It's like a bank vault, but bigger, very heavy, like concrete, basically, and steel door. I'm sure there's some lead or something in there. Massive door. And you're the only one in this room, and you have to prop yourself up on an exercise bike, basically. It's not really. It's a thin little bicycle seat and a couple of handles to hold on to, and you have in front of you some big chunks of lead that are blocking your lungs, and a couple of other little vital organs, but for the most part, you're pretty much straight up exposed to the radiation that's coming out of this machine that's being shot directly at you. So if you've ever experienced full body radiation, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So the first treatment was crazy. 3 cycles of 15 minutes apiece. I had to stand up or perch myself up on this bicycle seat for a total of 45 minutes. And I'll tell you, there was a guy that was going through this. He had non-Hodgkin's, which is a little bit more invasive than me. And he was going through this a little bit before I was. And his name was Brian. And I say was because, unfortunately, he passed away. We were in Seattle, I think, for about 8 months. With staging and then all the treatment and everything, getting ready to go. And I really got to know him. He was a really good guy. And he was a week ahead of me. He was going through he started the radiation a week before I did. And he'd have his radiation, and then he'd come out and go home and, lay on the couch and just chill. And walking around like nothing happened the whole week. He had plenty of energy. It was crazy. I don't know. And he had the same type of treatment that I did. I mean, it was just crazy. I couldn't believe it. And the whole week that he was out, before I went through it, I was like, oh, I can handle this. I got this. This is no big deal. So I'm standing there, and I get the first batch of radiation, and it was like, okay, no big deal, whatever. Didn't really feel anything. And they took a break for a couple of minutes, and then they gave me another batch, and I started feeling tired. And it was just a kind of mild tired. It wasn't anything major. And then I had the third batch, and each one of these, they're back-to-back 15 minutes. And I was having some major difficulty being able to stay awake and to stand up. They actually had to stop it a couple of times because I fell. And I had to do that 7 days in a row with 3 batches. And it was difficult. Well, they finally got the last one of the first day done. And I went out to the gurney. They had a gurney out in the hallway. And I sat on the gurney. And they were expecting me to get up and go home. Just like Brian did. And I don't know why I was so weak, why I was so unable to keep going. I didn't even have the chemo yet. It was like 3 months after I haven't had any treatment for like 3 months. Actually, I take that back. It was about 8 months. I didn't have any chemotherapy up to that point for about 8 months. And so I laid down on the bed, and I never felt so weak before in my life. I couldn't keep my eyes open. I had no energy. I had this internal feeling of death. It was the creepiest feeling I've ever felt in my life. And I prayed, which was not like me. But I said, God, I don't have the strength to carry on. You have to pick me up and carry me the rest of the way. And then I said, do with me as you will. From this moment forward, I don't have it. I'm yours. And I gave up. Gave up on everything. At that moment, I gave up on life and everything. Well, I don't remember any of the treatment or anything that happened after that. That was when I fell into a black hole, as I call it. I have little teeny memories here and there of the process, but for the most part, I don't remember. I know that they finally put me in my own room, and I was I guess I wasn't admitted. From what I've been told, at that moment I was not admitted into the hospital. At some point I must have woken up or got up and walked out the door. And I did that for that whole week and went to our apartment that we had the whole week. And but then right after my last treatment, they admitted me to the hospital, and I remember that they were getting ready to start the chemotherapy, and because the chemotherapy they were going to give me was so invasive and so horrific, they had to insert a catheter in me in order to flush my bladder, so that the chemotherapy that was pushed into my bladder wouldn't eat away my bladder, my lining. So they were basically constantly flushing, saline through my bladder. And I'm laying there waiting for the nurse to come in. And I specifically asked for a male nurse. God damn assholes. In comes the most beautiful, young, sexy looking nurse I've ever seen in my life. And here I am, butt-ass naked, laying on my bed. Well, I wasn't complete. I had one of them gowns that open up in the back on, but I'm laying there. And she has me scoot all the way to the end of the bed and lift up my gown. And of course, it's the weirdest thing. I must have had one hell of an erection, I'm telling you. Because they waited and they waited. They said, all right, you need to calm down. You need to relax. They kept telling me I needed to relax. She went to insert the catheter, and my prostate was clenched up too tight, and it wouldn't go through. She couldn't get it through the prostate or past the prostate. And finally, after probably about 10-15 minutes of waiting, the nurse said, you know what, I can't do this. It won't go through. So they brought another nurse in, an older lady, and she made it go through. And I'll tell you what, that was the most painful fucking experience I've ever gone through in my entire life. That was worse, I think, than the bone marrow biopsy. And if you've never had one of those, I'll tell you what, that was insane. They take this basically like a T-shaped, like handheld drill bit, basically. And they have you lean over one of these like massage chair like things, where they massage your back. Well, they stick this in your back, but it's at your hip, and they just start twisting it and drilling right through your skin and through your bone. And they get to a spot where they know that they're about to break and get into where the bone marrow is, and they tell you, they say, okay, this is gonna hurt a little, brace yourself, and pow, they like take a hammer basically, and they smack the end of that drill, like hand T-shaped drill, and it pops into your spine or into your hip or whatever, into your pelvis, I think is what it is, or something like that. And the pain is so incredible. It's like a champagne bottle. The champagne is inside that bottle, and it is under tremendous pressure. And all of a sudden, when that lid pops off, the pressure is released instantly, and the bone marrow squirts out, and they catch it. And the pain, I swear, is like a bowling ball. Literally. Like a bowling ball is shoved through a pinhole. That's the kind of pain it is. And I've had women later down the road explain to me that the pain that you experience in that moment is actually worse than the feeling of childbirth. Or better yet, childbirth happening in a split second. And I'll tell you, it was the most painful thing I've ever done. And I cannot imagine little children going through this. And the sad part is, they do. And I was under a local anesthetic. I wasn't supposed to remember any of it. I wasn't supposed to recall any of it. It was supposed to be as if the pain never happened. And I'll tell you what, I remember every single freaking ounce of that pain. And I bet it was even more painful than I remembered because of the local anesthetic that I had. So it was crazy. So back to Brian. So he went through a week before I did. He was up walking around, and then the moment when I went in to start my radiation is when he went in to start his chemotherapy. And they had him on the same floor as I did, on the 6th floor, and his room was right next to mine. So the 6th floor is for all those that are doing good. Everything is all right. The 7th floor is for all those who are not doing okay, that are most likely not going to make it. Extremely intensive care unit. Well, the rooms that we were in were isolation rooms. You have no immune system whatsoever. Your body is dead. Okay, you're basically a zombie. You're a walking corpse, literally. They have so much chemicals, so much vitamins and stuff pumping through you that's what's keeping you alive. I had 2 machines. Each machine had 25 IV fluids. Each machine was pumping 24 things into me. Was it 24? No. I take that back. Each machine had 12 lines feeding into me. I had a total of 24 different things in me. And then I had 2 that were separate. I had a sodium drip thing, I think is what it was, or something like magnesium drip or something like that was separate from that. And I had my morphine that was separate. So there was, in total, going into my body was 26 different things. And that was including what was being fed to me and everything. And it was all going through a line in my chest called a Hickman catheter, which is a direct line, straight to your heart. And so, yeah, it was intense. It was crazy. And everything stopped. My hair, of course, your hair falls out, but my nails stopped growing. My skin stopped growing. I had big, huge red sores all over my body where the skin had worn off, but it was unable to produce new skin. And so my skin was flaking off. I mean, it was bad. I had sores in my mouth. they had to give me eye drops to keep my eyes moist. It was just craziness. All around, insane craziness. The things we go through, right? But I'm celebrating 17 years this July, so yay me! And this isn't something I normally tell anybody, but anyways, I hope none of you ever have to go through this, and I'll talk about it more later down the road. But until then, y'all have yourselves a fantastic rest of the day. I love you very much, and, well, bye for now.
This has been a Graham's World broadcast, brought to you directly from Graham's mind. So stay tuned, because there's more to come.